The tiger is one of nature's most stunning creatures. Ferocious, beheld as a symbol of courage by numerous cultures, alongside the lion they emanate a sensation of primal power and royalty. So it's no wonder that the world's first intercity railway, wanting to radiate such qualities with their steam locomotives, looked to the world's great predators for inspiration. Ordered by the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in 1837 from Todd, Kitson and Laird of Leeds, number 58 Tiger, like her sister Lion, was built using patents produced by Robert Stevenson and John Melling. Much of Tiger's story has since been lost to history. It is assumed to have paralleled that of the preserved Lion, and that Tiger was rebuilt at Edge Hill in 1841. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway was soon absorbed into the Grand Junction Railway, which in turn was absorbed into the London and North Western Railway. Tiger is assumed again to have been renumbered until this time, and was used until withdrawn and converted into a stationary pump, until eventually scrapped. With so many wonderful locomotives available to buy in the hobby, it's easy to get carried away with buying all those that you think look nice and building a nice, well-rounded collection. So in order to try and temper myself, I set a few very strict criteria for the engines that do end up in my collection. These are ones that I've either ridden on, have seen in preservation, or would like to see and ride in preservation at some point, hopefully in the future. But every now and then there's a locomotive that I just see and feel like, yes, I need to have one of those. While I already have Rocket from the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in my collection, I really wanted something that filled the gap between then and the various pre-grouping railways we see a lot of models of. So I wanted something that sort of ran on that Grand Junction Railway, the first trunk line in the UK, and Lion and Tiger were the two locomotives now available that fit that bill. While there is a preserved form of Lion available, there's been a lot of discourse over the years over whether this locomotive is actually Lion, and also whether it's an accurate representation of an 1840s era steam locomotive, given the 1930s rebuild it received was an idealised expectation and not necessarily a historical restoration. So if you want to find out more details about this debate of whether Lion is actually Lion, I recommend checking out the video on this by Anthony Dawson, who's done a wonderful deep dive, and I've linked his video in the description. So with Hornby's Tiger looking like a more representative example of a typical 1840s locomotive than the available Lion, it became a simple choice of which one I would buy when Hornby finally released Tiger on its own outside of a train pack, which they should have done in the first place. I picked this one up on pre-order from Rails of Sheffield for £125.99, which had a small discount off the £139.99 RRP. So with so little to go off, how have Hornby done with painting the stripes back onto the Tiger? Pretty darn well if we're going off aesthetics alone. The loco comes in a more rustic, special box than a lot of other Hornby locos I've had before, with a nice image of a Liverpool and Manchester Railway 042 adorning the front. My only complaint about the packaging is the tight foam inside. It's such a snug fit for the engine that I feared it was too stuck to get out without causing damage to the finer details. Alas, Tiger was removed. Painted in a fetching Liverpool and Manchester green livery, there is a lot to love here. Atop a die-cast chassis, the electroplated boiler brilliantly encapsulates the texture of a wooden planked boiler. Ultra-fine separately fitted details cover this, from the chaining on the front buffer beam to the small cab steps and cab control detail. A lot of these details are etched or brass. The boiler top in particular looks very fine and well fitted, though the top pieces are prone to getting knocked or bent, so great care should be taken. Back to the loco's looks and we can see all the rivet detailing and nice golden boiler banding. The coupling rods have a nice mottled metal texture to their paints. The front of the engine has the prototypical gap between the snoke box and the wooden buffer beam, the latter of which is fitted with a nice planking texture and dumb buffers. The cylinders are also clearly visible underneath with the drain cocks nicely picked out. Once again I'm going to whine about the coupling. The front chain coupling looks excellent, but the rear hook looks out of place by comparison, and doesn't come with any chains for coupling to rolling stock. There is also no NEM pocket, restricting what this loco can pull to Hornby's Era 1 stock only. Inside the loco, out of sight, is a 3-pole motor but no flywheel, so there isn't as much grunt or pulling power in this as other larger tender locos, so this is best suited to short, era-specific trains. The DCC socket is stored underneath the loco in a small box accessible with a screw, right next to some fantastic underframe detailing. A next 18-pin decoder or Hornby's HM7000 Bluetooth decoders can be fitted. From this angle you can see that all the axles are fitted with bearings, and even the tender axles have pickups, which are brilliant for reliability and smooth running. Unfortunately, the glaring downside is the use of wiring and plugs to connect the loco and tender pickups, leaving an unsightly number of wires between the loco and tender. Given new Hornby locos are coming out with more discreet but robust connection methods, allowing tenders to be detached, it's disappointing to see it not employed here when the rest of the loco is so finely detailed and designed. Also included are 2 period crew figures, fully painted for manning the controls. These have pegs on their feet that fit into small holes on the cab floor, allowing for easy insert and removal. While well painted in general, the ghoulish white face and hands makes these figures seem like corpses dredged up from the loco's heyday in order to drive it now, which isn't the most enticing complexion for a model figure. Still though, they are a nice inclusion that can easily be touched up with a modeller's adept brush. All in all, Tiger is a stunning looking engine, capturing the essence of a generic 1840s engine well based off what we know. The engine without crew weighs in at 96 grams, which is half decent considering the size. The wheel gauges come in at 14.6mm for the driving axles and 14.4 for the undriven axle, which is fairly close to what's expected. Now let's get Tiger moving. She's not run in yet, but already has a nice low speed control and can crawl along the tracks at a leisurely pace. There's no slowdown as the loco passes over baseboard joins. Tiger handles the station points well too, with exceptional performance. Overall, a smooth, controlled runner. Now, depending on who you ask, there's a lot of things that people want to have prioritised in a model. Some people want highly finessed detail with all the rivets and drain cocks and all the tiny little intricacies captured on the model. Some people want something with a strong, robust mechanism capable of pulling almost any train that they could imagine. And some people want something that is geared to the correct speed and capable of doing really fine, slow crawls, as if they were doing shunting manoeuvres. And some people want a balance of all of these, not necessarily being the best at any of them, but just something that's available at a reasonable price. For me, I'm one of these people that wants a model that intersects all of these and not perhaps excelling at all of them. But if I was to lean to any one of these characteristics, it would be something that is correctly geared to an appropriate scale speed for the locomotive it's modelling. My earliest train sets were the small Hornby 040 and 060s that have been affectionately dubbed the pocket rockets because they could achieve scale speed of Mach 13 if you whacked the controller right the way up. This just never really looked right if they were trying to pull a train of passengers or supposedly heavy coal wagons. So, I have devised a way of measuring the scale speed of locomotives and how well geared they are. My main loop of track on the boards is a scale distance of 0.28 miles, effectively a quarter-mile circuit. For each of my engines, I'll test their geared speeds by sending them on a single timed lap around the baseboard, with the controller set at 50%. Each engine will start with their rear buffers against the baseboard join by the station, and will be timed until the whole engine passes over this join. Calculating the distance and time, I can work out the scale speed in miles per hour. If the scale speed comes up within the locomotive's realistic operating speeds, then it's a pass. If it doesn't, then it's a fail in my eyes. All of this will fold under the performance criteria in my final thoughts at the end. During the run, the engines will have to negotiate points, baseboard joins and third radius curves. All times will be recorded on this power lap board, which is totally original and not a homage to a well-known TV show. The engine's times will be ranked from fastest at the top to slowest at the bottom, with a record of time and scale speed. However, it's not that simple. You'd want your big, express, streamlined engines posting really quick laps, as their real-life counterparts would have reached those speeds, and you'd want slower, smaller shunting engines at the bottom, really transiling their way around the layout. So if you end up with a small Packet or an 040 posting a really quick time up here and being amongst the A4s and the P2s, you know something's gone wrong with the gearing inside it and it's not been geared very well. So depending on how the train types themselves map onto this lap board is going to be very interesting. Sending trains zooming around a circuit at yet to be determined speeds is a risky business, so I needed a crewman who was willing to take daring risks off the books, with nothing to live for and nothing to die for. I needed a train racing driver, and thankfully I found one. Conveniently, he dons overalls the same colour as my channel branding, and is a silent type who takes orders to drive whatever, whenever. All I get out of him is grunts, so that name's going to stick. Without further ado, it's time to send the grunt to Tiger. Time to set our first lap time. And she's off, sauntering out of the station, passing over the point and round the first bend onto the second baseboard. There she goes, passing by the empty waterside, going at a leisurely pace down through the transfer halt, round past the farmyard, back into the station and across the line. So the Hornby Tiger did the lap in 27.5 seconds, which is a scale speed of 36.7 miles an hour. That's not far off the recorded realistic top speed for Lion, which was 40 to 45 miles an hour. So that, for something at 50%, is a really well geared locomotive. Obviously, you can whack it up to 100% and go way faster than Lion would have been able to go in real life. But if you're looking to stick to slow speeds, crawling around the layout, pulling smaller, slower trains, this is a really good geared locomotive for that. And here Tiger is doing what she was designed for, pulling some splendid Era 1 coal wagons made by Sam's Trains. Aside from the Acura scale children wagons, these are the most historically accurate Era 1 freight wagons produced thus far, and they have more coupling options than any other Era 1 wagon. Hornby's flatbeds, coal wagons, and horse and sheep boxes all have their own problems. So if you're looking for Era 1 freight wagons, these are great value and definitely a must-have. Now on to my final thoughts. For a quick recap of my scoring system and categories breakdown, please check out my Era 1 coach review, which I've got linked on the screen. The livery and decoration on this thing is beautiful, with brilliant textures for differentiating wood and metal, to finely applied lining and painted details. There's no other word for this than stunning. Undead crew members aside, I'm blown away by everything going on this engine's decoration. For details and features, there's a ton on here, from the buffer beams to the boiler. All feels well applied and solid apart from some of the thinner protrusions. Included crew are a nice bonus as well and saves an additional purchase. Overall, this is a winner for me. Quality. The die-cast chassis helps give this loco sufficient mass to counter its 3-pole motor. Even the detailing feels robust apart from the thinnest pieces, though these are prone to bending rather than snapping, so have some more malleability than if the parts were brittle plastic. As long as this engine isn't pushed to pull stupidly long or heavy trains, it's a solid product. Performance. This was next to faultless. The engine can crawl along at low speeds, has no issues with points or baseboard joins, runs smoothly and quietly in either direction, and even when shot around the circuit at 50% speed, it's well geared enough to look realistic and not go stupidly fast. 100% happy with how this has performed and look forward to running it a lot more in the future. Finally, onto price. £126 for a tender engine this small feels a tad on the tight side, but taking into account the decoration, the level of detail, the figures included and the performance, I'm won over by what I paid for this. It's pleased me to great heights in the other categories, and I feel I've spent my money well in picking this up. While we'll never know if this is what Tiger actually looked like, there's no better 00 gauge locomotive out there that encapsulates the spirit and prowess of early railways in the 1840s. It's just a pity about the couplings not being more universal. Overall, this is a solid 5 out of 5, and I rate this as an essential item for any railway history buff. So it seems that the Hornby Tiger is burning bright. This is a truly unique and wonderful addition to my collection, helping fill in the gap between Rocket and my pre-grouping locomotives. With locomotion number 1 on the horizon from Hornby looking incredibly promising, hopefully we can expect more great things from the Era 1 range. As long as they sort out the couplings. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in another video very soon.